Hey guys, welcome back. So now with getting back into death metal and getting into Multiverses End, it's here where we see like the lantern portion of the Anti-Crisis, but there's also a ton of other takeaways in this one shot. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch us spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so at this point with us getting into Multiverses End, which much like Trinity Crisis, Speed Metal, and Doom Metal so far, it's taking us on this adventure to their different locations and just showing us how everybody's doing. And in the case of Multiverses End, we know that John Stewart and the other Lanterns, their job was to stop the Cosmic Towers from feeding power to Perpetua, but the first thing we see when we get into Multiverses End is these towers shining bright with Crisis energy. And when we initially hop in and get a look at this tower on Earth 3, we get this narration that's very much in the tone of admiration for how beautiful this site is, which is being told by Owlman. And prior to this point, I kind of felt like, okay, like when are we gonna see the crime syndicate show up in death metal? Because prior to this point, when we had seen them recruited within Arisen, which was back when Perpetua had called for Lex to bring them in, like it really felt like at the time that they were gonna have a much bigger role a lot sooner. But then again, when Johnny Quick was killed, because speedsters gotta die in a crisis, but when he was killed, I kind of felt like these guys were expendable, at least in the narrative leading up to this point. But also with Owlman, who has John Stewart here, like even though he doesn't know exactly what the heroes had planned, he does know at least that they've split up and gone to their different locations in order to make an attempt to stop Perpetua. But at this point, the work that had begun throughout Justice League and Year of the Villain, through Arisen and out to death metal, with Perpetua pretty much renovating the multiverse, like Owlman lets John know like it's come to the point to where the heroes are not going to stop this. And for that reason, Owlman, he doesn't need to interrogate John, and any information he has to give doesn't matter. But at this point, Owlman lets John know that he has his antimatter gun with yellow bullets that'll tear through his constructs, and because of that he could just end John, but he doesn't, and mainly because he believes if Perpetua wins, then everyone else is losing in some form of way, like no one but her is coming out on top. And really, like the thing is, like with this hesitation from Owlman, it very much plays into him being the Batman of Earth 3. And if you think about it, like on Earth 3 where all the heroes are villains and the villains are heroes, like on the surface you'd imagine that every member of the crime syndicate, like they would want this to happen. But also at the same time, like when you take Earth 3, who's been siding with Doom well before Perpetua's sign hit the sky, like for them, and especially in the case of Owlman, like it makes more sense to see him play into the opposite of what Batman would stand for, but yet and still take this approach with just as much caution and hesitation. But then also, in addition to his hesitation, he admits to John that his motivations are also personal, because the Batman who laughs is outshining Owlman ridiculously. But Owlman cannot stand this guy because Owlman was supposed to be the darkest reflection of Batman. And it makes sense because prior to Dark Knight's Metal and the introduction to the Dark Multiverse, like prior to then, there wasn't a lot of Batman like in line for that spot. And really aside from Owlman, like the first person that comes to mind is like Earth 43 Bruce Wayne, who we also see again in this issue. Like I guess he escaped Wally's trap from Flash Forward, but aside from him and perhaps even Thomas Wayne, like Owlman was supposed to be your darkest version of Batman. And even to go a step further, like Earth 3 was practically your Dark Multiverse prior to the discovery of the actual Dark Multiverse. So it's like now with Owlman making this point, it's like, okay, I get it. But with him making this point, it shows us where a bit more of his motivation is coming from. But after this, we then go over to Earth X, and when we do, we get a really interesting moment between Guy Gardner, Captain Carrot, and Earth 22 Kid Flash. Because while they're here, they're trying to do this mass evacuation before they destroy the tower, and Earth 22 Kid Flash, she's just like, look, like she's going through a lot at this moment, because Speed Force is falling apart, and she hears speedsters calling out to her from the Speed Force, which for the most part is a byproduct of speed metal. But even still, in her case, she doesn't know that, because as far as she knows, Earth 22 is gone, so she has no home. And as far as all the speedsters calling out to her from the Speed Force, she believes that they're only ghosts, because once again, the whole plan of hiding in the Speed Force and waiting for Wally back in Speed Metal, like that was a huge gamble that only paid off because Wally made it back with the Mobius chair. But when she expresses this, like where she's at and what's going on, like we get a huge moment from Captain Carrot, who gives her this huge speech of we gotta do what we can now and try to save what's left, which is really huge in his case because he had lost so much already too. But after this, we then see Guy Gardner calling out to the other Lanterns and checking in with like Hal Jordan on Earth 29, Kyle Rayner on Earth 43, Simon and Jessica on Earth 50, but with doing this he gets no response from John on Earth 3. But in the case of John, we know at this point he ain't answering no calls. But when we jump back to Earth 3, and over there along with John you also have President Superman and also Earth 23 Wonder Woman, who in their case they're still holding their own with the crime syndicate. But it's here in the case with John where Owlman tells him like he wants to know everything that he knows before he makes the decision to help him and the other heroes. And it's here where John tells him everything he knows, which is pretty much a run through of what we talked about on the Justice League playlist as far as the origin of Perpetua and her being assigned by the Source to create the multiverse. But because these worlds were supposed to live and then eventually die, and one day her as well with them, she then took it upon herself to create a multiverse that wouldn't die. And with doing so, she then brought forth her 3 sons, the Monitor, the World Forger, and the Anti-Monitor, who then eventually snitched on their moms and got her locked up. But I also got a link below if you want a more detailed version of the origin of the multiverse, because we had got a more detailed version of this story within the Justice League issues throughout their journey to the 6th dimension and going into the war between Doom and Justice. But it's here where John tells all this to Owlman and pretty much gets him caught up. But also with this, like much of the narrative that John explains to Owlman, this is much of what the Batman Who Laughs had already understood throughout the course of Justice League, because once Perpetua was trapped in the Source Wall, to where at the time she had been instigating every crisis, she had been using all of these events as tools to get herself free. Because every time a crisis takes place and then the multiverse is reformed after, it's almost like gluing together a broken cup, then dropping it again, then gluing it back together. And in this case, the cup itself containing the multiverse would be the Source Wall, and every time it reformed after a crisis, it lost its integrity. And then eventually we got to Dark Knight's Metal and Perpetua broke free. But just to add on to that, like after Dark Knight's Metal, when the Source Wall had broken open, and after that starting in like the background of Justice League No Justice, going into the war between Doom and Justice, but like within that window, those events that were like the catalyst for getting Perpetua free, as we know, a lot of those things had taken place because of the Batman Who Laughs who had been working in the background, but also because he had contributed in such a way and also used Lex Luthor's self-centered mindset in order to assist Perpetua. It was like that list of contributions that the Batman Who Laughs had used in order to take Lex Luthor's place in his seat of power. And just to bring back the comparison, like I don't think Owlman could have finessed the creator of the multiverse in such a way. But then it's also here where John is explaining to Owlman, like with the destruction and the recreation of the multiverse and the factor of it healing itself after crisis, which then contributes to the reason that Owlman is even here. But with doing this, Owlman tells him that he needs proof. So then John gives him a flash drive with like access to Harbinger, and possibly at this point all that's left of Harbinger after the destruction of the House of Heroes. But because Harbinger has the data of what had taken place within previous crisis events, Owlman then accesses Harbinger to confirm if he's truly not the original Owlman. But also during this time where we jump back to Earth X, to where at this time Guy Gardner, Captain Carrot, they're continuing their evac to get people out of the multiverse and into the bleed, with that potentially being the only place that they'll be safe from either the towers exploding or Perpetua destroying other worlds. But while they're doing this evac, like Captain Carrot, he has a moment, man. And I'm not the biggest Captain Carrot fan, but like in this moment, it's hard not to feel for this guy. Because when this little girl was like, "Thank you, Captain Carrot, like thank you for saving us," and he once again, much like he did with Kid Flash, like he gives this little girl the positive speech. But then when Guy Gardner walks up and just asks Captain Carrot if he's okay, like the dude is in tears. And reasonably so, cause like you think about it, man, this is like that, you know, when people tell you to check on your strong friend, like in this case, that's Captain Carrot. Because at this point, he just believes that he should have done more. And on top of that, he's overwhelmed with guilt because before the destruction of Earth 26, he just believes that he should have called for help before it got so bad. And after that, with soon after the destruction of the House of Heroes, it's almost like he had to relive that failure once again. But the crazy thing, like as like an insult to injury, like while they're having this conversation and he tells Guy that he's glad that he came and showed up, like right then Perpetua just pops up in the sky. And it's like they just look up and it's like, oh man, I was just talking about how horrible you are in my life. Like look at you, there you are. And it's like her timing couldn't have been more terrifying. But when she pops up, she pretty much just comes here to tell them that their rescue attempt's not gonna work because she's sending her allies from the Dark Multiverse. And when she does this, we get the arrival of like baby Batman and the Rainbow Batman Corps. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe we had got his origin like back in Legends of the Dark Knights, and I'm really just piecing this together because it's another baby Batman with a really big head. But if this is the same instance, which I believe it is, but like in Legends of the Dark Knights, we had got the story where Bruce Wayne had died and he had set up a contingency for his mind to go into this genetically engineered body, but when he had came out, he was a baby. And like it was supposed to give him the advantage of having like multiple lifetimes as Batman in a fresh body, but yet and still it presented a bit of a problem even with him having his full Batman mind. But then again, initially he wasn't strong enough to hold up his own head. But now with this baby Batman arriving here with the Rainbow Batman Corps, like they show up and they tell the crime syndicate to fall back, and from there they effectively push the heroes back further away from their door that was going to take them into the bleed and out of harm's way. But also while this is happening, we jump back to Owlman, who at this point is getting his answer from Harbinger after asking how his predecessors died. And from there she takes him right down the list, with the first one dying during the first Crisis event, and after that when his planet reformed in the antimatter universe, which then came to an end at the birth of the New 52. But then after that, after being born in the New 52, then that Owlman was killed by Dr. Manhattan, who as we know has a habit of just blowing up people in order to keep it secret. But like with Owlman seeing this, like he looks at it and he's quiet for a little bit, but then he just laughs hysterically because at this point he understands like no matter what, he's gonna come back because Owlman has existed in every iteration of the multiverse. And like when he discovers this, like it's funny to me because when he discovers this, like he goes into full griefer mode. And he's like that player that enters the lobby and he realizes the game is broken. And it's like he really switches into that mindset like, what do you mean if I die, I keep all my progress? Because when he finds this out, he goes out there and he just starts killing the rest of the crime syndicate. But with him doing this, this gives John and the others the opportunity to get out of there and make their way into the bleed, because Owlman had also told John that he has the towers rigged to explode, and if he helps take them down, he knows he's more likely to appear in the next version of the multiverse, because once again, there's always an Owlman. But after the heroes leave and baby Batman shows back up, and it's kind of funny because I like baby Batman, like he reminds me like a little Funko Pop or something. But when baby Batman shows up and he kind of puts together the idea that Owlman and all of them are gonna die, like it's kind of funny because Owlman, he kind of brags a bit before he blows everything up, because he's like, hey look, I'm gonna come back and you're not, and the reason why you're not is because you're a dumb idea, and the multiverse is not gonna let you come back again. Like nobody's gonna remember you. Which is one of those things like, I don't know man, he just might, because baby Batman would definitely sell a lot of merch. But with this happening and the towers being effectively destroyed, Perpetua is then cut off from her power and the people of those remaining worlds are effectively saved. And for the time being, they're just keeping the people aboard the carrier within the bleed, which is the space between the different Earths. But most importantly, with Perpetua losing the connection to her power, or at least to the source that was fueling her power, it's like now she doesn't really stand a chance against the heroes or against the Darkest Night. And so now real quick before we go, I want to give a special shout out to all the Patreons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link down below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.